practices, the kind of industrial practices that we will adapt in order to minimize the impact or the effect of industries or industrial activities on our environment. Because if you look at the negative impact of these industries on our environment, it's as if those negative, the challenges that are emanating from this negative impact are maybe in the nearest future would outweigh the positive impact we generate from industries. And as such, there is need for us to come up with ways of sustainable industrial practices that will minimize this impact to the barest minimum, maybe zero level, or to a level that is not harmful to man and his environment. So that is what we'll be doing today. And then we'll round up with the other themes. So first, we need to look at impact of industries on our environment. The first here is air pollution. Air pollution. You know, from our industrial activities, we have emissions of harmful gases. These gases include carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, methane gas, particulate matter, and other greenhouse gases that affect our environment. In fact, some of these greenhouse gases are the main cause of climate change. If you have an idea of what climate change is, and the main triggers of climate change. Maybe we'll look at that aspect later on, but what we're looking at is emissions of these harmful gases impact our environment. They create health challenges, they alter the ecosystem, and so many dimensions of the environment that if care is not taken and if nothing is done, it will get to a point whereby man himself will not be able to live within this environment. If you go to highly industrialized nations like Japan, China, and etc., if you look at air pollution issues in such countries, is such that even driving in the daytime, you will need to on your headlamp because of maybe the air composition comprising of particulate matters beyond safe levels. So they have respiratory health issues and etc. The second is water pollution. You know, from our industrial sector, you will observe that waste is being released into water bodies sometimes. And most of these wastes are toxic chemicals, the heavy metals or untreated water and etc. They affect the aquatic ecosystem. They affect the water bodies. In fact, they alter the natural setting of those water bodies, thereby influencing the entire environment. Now, they also have health implications because if you don't treat such water sources and you take them, it is going to affect your health, affect your well-being, and etc. Now, soil degradation. Industrial activities such as mining, chemical manufacturing, and other improper waste disposal affect our soils. They cause soil contamination. They change the original soil composition or soil structure, sometimes removing healthy microorganisms that help in maybe improving air quality of the soil, improving porosity of the soil, and etc. So that affects soil and it affects agricultural productivity, reduced productivity, affect even what it is produced. Sometimes the output from such agricultural activities contain some of these harmful chemicals, and when you consume them, it is going to affect you. In fact, if you know gamalin is a banned substance, quite okay. If you apply it to your soil, the plant will utilize it and then store part of the gamalin substance in the fruit it has produced. When you consume it, after some time, there's a safe level you can consume that substance. When it gets beyond that level, you will die silently. And there are other substances that are even more harmful than gamalin. It affects our underground water. We're made to understand that underground water is one of the safest, but with industrial activities, some of these hazardous substances seep into the soil through infiltration and percolation down to the subsoil, then thereby contaminating underground water. And if you look at the sources of water, most nations or most regions rely on underground water through borehole and etc. In fact, in third world countries, borehole is considered as one of the cheapest and the easiest to access in terms of water supply, because we don't have good treatment plants and etc. Another impact of industries on the environment is deforestation and land use change. When industries that rely on raw materials derived from the forest, industries like logging, construction companies, even agriculture, they cause deforestation. And this affects the plant cover of the area. This has so many impacts on our environment because the trees that form forest, the tree communities that form the forest protect the environment from the direct sunlight, protect the environment from direct rainfall impact, and then protect the soils under and etc. Now, if you remove these trees, first, you are going to experience increased surface runoff because the trees that serve as protective cover to the soils are no more. No rainfall interception. You have direct rain droplets on the soil, thereby reducing infiltration. And the moment you begin to experience reduced level of infiltration, there will be increased surface runoff. Surface runoff will move along with maybe initiating erosion processes resulting to land degradation and etc. And apart from that, there's that aspect of biodiversity loss. It changed the entire composition of the forest cover. And this has so many other implications on our environment. Climate change. Climate change is another thing that is affecting man seriously. In fact, climate change is a topical issue. Climate change is like 90 to 100% man-made. Man interference with the environment through industrial activities and other activities, thereby releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Now, maybe let me take you down to the science of climate change and how these greenhouse gases influence the climatic conditions of our areas. Before, maybe around the 1000 to 1500 before now, the amount of greenhouse gases within the atmosphere were limited. And when you have sun rays from the sun, they will pass through the ozone layer into our atmosphere, get to the Earth's surface. Some of the sun rays are absorbed by the Earth material. Some are re-radiated. Some are deflected or reflected, and etc. Now, in a situation where you have less greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the understanding there is that the sun rays re-radiated will escape almost 100% back into firmament. But the moment there was increase in greenhouse gases, more of this sun rays gets into the atmosphere through the ozone layer. And then by the time it's re-radiated, it is trapped by these greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane gas, particulate matter, sulfur oxides, and etc. They trap these sun rays, thereby increasing the temperature of the earth and the surrounding atmosphere, to a point that over time we have experienced 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature. That is global temperature. And that alone has altered rainfall, causing rainfall variability. We're experiencing a late onset of rainfall, early cessation. Sometimes we will have poorly distributed rainfall amount. Sometimes we're experiencing drought. We're experiencing August break. In fact, August break for some time past, we're not experiencing it again, but it has returned. The last 2 years, we experienced August break, and then it affected agricultural productivity and so many other things. So this climate change is affecting every aspect of human life. Temperature increasing, rainfall variability affecting agriculture, and then so many other dimensions, even affecting the industrial sector also. Now, what are the strategies that we can adapt to make our industrial activities sustainable in such a way that their impact on our environment is minimized? One of it is energy efficiency and renewables. There's need for us to transit from the use of fossil fuels to renewable energy, such as solar energy, wind energy, biomass, even hydroelectric power generation using water bodies, and etc. If we move away from this, we're going to cut down on the level of emissions into the atmosphere, and as such, minimizing the impact of our industrial activities to the environment. If you see the progression from coal to now crude, oil, diesel, gas, and etc. But if we go to solar emits nothing. Wind energy emits nothing. Biomass emits nothing. And as such, we'll be able to cut down emissions from our industrial activities to a minimal level. But if we remain on using fossil fuel, it will be difficult for us to cut down on that aspect on the environment. So transiting from fossil fuel to this clean energy is very important strategy in trying to minimize the impact of our industrial activities on the environment. Secondly, is the circular economy. Circular economy talks about managing waste in such a way that you either reduce waste from the source of production, reuse the waste, or recycle it. In fact, is a principle that talks about moving from waste to wealth, generating wealth from waste in such a way that if you cannot cut down on either your emissions or waste generated from your industrial activities, you should plan on reusing it. If you cannot reuse it, you should think of recycling in such a way that you are going to minimize the impact of waste generated from your industrial activities on the environment. Now, the number 3 is the adoption of cleaner production technologies. Adoption of cleaner production technologies. Industries should think of transiting from old technologies that were emitting so much waste into the environment to current or state-of-the-art technology that are designed to minimize waste or reduce waste or prevent pollution completely, and etc. You can achieve that through maybe if your industry emits particulate matters, you should design filters. If you release wastewater, you should integrate waste treatment plant into your industrial activities so that by the time you generate wastewater, it should be treated before releasing into the environment, or it should be treated before reusing, or it should be treated before recycling, and etc. That will help in cutting down the impact of this toxic waste on our environment. Now, the next one is waste management. Waste management. We'll talk about waste management. We're looking at generation, transportation, and then disposal. So in every stage, you should have plans of either reducing waste at the source of generation, or plans of recycling them, or plans of reusing them, or plans of treating such waste and disposal. If you don't integrate that into your industrial activities, then for most regions, you will not be allowed to carry out production activities. It's just that in third world countries like Nigeria, we have such policies, but we don't even implement, we don't monitor, we don't see how industries are utilizing such guidelines. Take, for instance, before you establish your industry, you are expected to carry out environmental impact assessment. And some of the components of your environmental impact assessment is that you should have a proper way, a clear procedure on how you intend to manage your waste. And most industries will come up with a very good plan, submit it to NESRA for approval. It is approved, and then or Ministry of Environment is approved. And then when they get to establishing the industry, they put the plan aside and they do something else. If you remember what happened in the ethanol plant along Boko Road in Makurdi, when you are approaching Abinse or so, they had an approved EIA document, but at the end of the day, they were releasing effluents directly into River Benue. And as such, they prevented the locals from going close to the factory, going behind the factory. They had guards mount on towers so that if you attempt going closer, they can pick you up. It took the effort of some hikers who discovered what was going on and then informed NESRA and other relevant agencies before the company was sealed. I don't know whether they have integrated proper waste management into that company before allowing them to commence production again. But it's another thing. Maybe we'll deliberate more on that, on the Nigerian factor and what other developing countries are going through in terms of their policy implementation, monitoring, and results. The next is sustainable sourcing. Sustainable sourcing talks about utilizing raw materials that are from companies or producers that are conscious about the environment. In fact, that are put in place measures of minimizing the impact of the activities on the environment. It talks about green chain supply. If a miner is mining maybe minerals that can release toxic waste into the environment, such as lead and etc., that are harmful to man and etc., but don't have any measure of controlling that, then you don't purchase from them. You must get your raw materials from sources that are within the green supply chain or that are conscious of the environment to help contribute in protecting the environment. That is, the miner should put measures that will protect the environment. The transporter should also transport such raw materials with means that are environmentally friendly, not the ones using fossil fuel, but maybe using solar energy, lithium batteries, and etc., or electric cars, or to move such resources to site, and every other measure, etc. And then you should also plan to use transact with suppliers that use clean energy. They are not using fossil fuel, but they are using using solar, using biomass, using other clean energy sources. Now, let's look at policies that encourage environmental sustainability in terms of our industrial practices. We'll look at them in components. The first component is regulatory instruments. What are the regulatory instruments in place to ensure that industries adapt sustainable practices? One is emission standards. Emission standards, for most nations, there are laws, there are policies that are in place to ensure that you don't emit beyond a given amount of gases into the atmosphere or pollutants generally. So you are asked, you have a limit, maybe 100 grams per time. If you go beyond that time, you'll be sanctioned. Beyond that amount, you will be sanctioned. For Nigeria, we have National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency Act, which was in place for which has been in place for some time now. Then for Europe, you have the Industrial Emissions Directive. Under such acts or directives, there are guidelines for whatever you are producing. This is the allowable amount of waste into the environment. If you go beyond that, you'll be penalized. Then the second one is effluent discharge standards. You have maximum limits for BOD or COD, heavy metals and other contaminants before discharge into water bodies. This is in place to control how much of this industrial waste get into our environment, and they are within safe levels. If it goes beyond that level, you will be sanctioned, you will be penalized, although it all depends on the level of implementation, monitoring, and how efficient the agencies saddled with such responsibilities are doing. Then the next is technology standards. You are required to install technologies that have an integrated component of pollution control. For instance, filters. If you are releasing particulate matters, maybe a cement factory, for instance, you are releasing dust into the atmosphere, you should have a unit that collects the dust and then reuse it or recycle it, and etc. If you are a company that releases wastewater and etc., you must integrate a wastewater plant as part of your industrial activity in order to be able to protect the environment. And then the next is environmental impact assessment. I talked about environmental impact assessment is an act, Environmental Impact Assessment Act of 1992, that has been in place, which says that before you establish an industry, you must carry out EIA, that is Environmental Impact Assessment, to clearly show that to the regulatory bodies that this is how you intend to manage waste. This is how you intend to protect the environment. This is how you intend to set up your factory in order to minimize waste release into the atmosphere. In fact, you must receive an approval of your EIA assessment before you can establish your industry. Then the second one is market-based instruments. You know, apart from some policies to minimize industrial impact on the environment, there's also some kind of market-based instruments in form of incentives and etc. to minimize waste. For instance, the carbon tax. Carbon tax here is a tax imposed on industries that produce above their allowable limit. If you go beyond that limit, you are expected to pay some amount of money to government or to regulatory organs so that they can now maybe use that money to compensate other regions or other areas that are already putting up measures to minimize the impact of this CO2, that is carbon dioxide, emitted by your industry. For Sweden, Sweden introduced a carbon tax in 1991, and then that reduced emissions decline. Because the moment you say, if you produce an additional amount of carbon dioxide, you are expected to pay so amount. And as such, most industries didn't want to pay more tax and thereby reduce the amount of emission within the allowable limit and etc. And that contributed to serious decline in emissions while GDP continued to increase in Sweden at that time. Now we have emissions trading system. Emission trading system. Emission trading system, it's a system that is operated in the European Union, and then they have emission trading mechanism in such that if you produce more than what you're allowed to produce, you are asked to pay money, similar to the carbon tax stuff. You're allowed to pay money, you're asked to pay extra money, and that money is used to compensate people that are maybe suffering from your industrial activities or people that are putting up measures that can control this. In 2018, 2019, before COVID, Cross River State got that grant of carbon credit. There's what is called carbon credit. If you preserve the environment, you pay for it. If you degrade the environment, you pay for it. So Cross River got that award in that year because of their level of forest preservation, forest conservation within their area. But UN don't deal directly with sub-regions. They deal with the main region. And that money was released to Ministry of Environment. I think up to now, Cross River is battling with Ministry of Environment to release that money to the state. Hello, class rep.
Yes, sir. Yes, Prof. Hello, Prof.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, Prof. Prof, I'm here, sir.
It's like I went off at some point, right?
Yes, the network
It's not
took
too
you out
good,
of power. Sir.
For how long?
No, it's good, but for about 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, so maybe let me see. So let me so where
But you are very
are we now?
loud and clear now, sir.
Okay. So let me share my screen again. I think it went off. So please give me time to share my screen.
Okay, sir.
But are you guys following at all?
Yes, we are following, sir.
Okay.
Please respond in the comment section. In the chat section, we are following.
Okay, okay. But can you see my screen? Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir. Responses, sir.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir. We can see your screen, sir.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir.
So, oh, sorry, let me.
Policies that encourage environmental sustainability.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we're on
Policies that encourage environmental sustainability.
okay, we're on number 2. We're looking at market-based instruments. The first one was regulatory instruments, that is purely on policies, laws, and guidelines, right? So now we are on the next one, which is market-based instruments. And I talked about carbon tax. So I'm on emission trading system, where I gave an example of what happened in Cross River. You know, Cross River got the award in 2018 or 2019. That's before COVID. And yeah, in Cross River State. But you know, the money was not paid directly to state Cross River government. It was paid to Ministry of Environment, which is the line ministry. And it became a tug of war. I don't know whether up till now Cross River were able to access such funds because it was confiscated by Ministry of Environment. Their first argument was that even though Cross River was the recipient, it is the entire country that contributed in minimizing the impact of emissions to the environment, and not just forests in Cross River. But UN were specific that it is Cross River state government or Cross River State that received the award. And so it became a tug of war. I know that in Nigeria, when it comes to money, we put rational thinking aside and we'll do what we feel is right. I see some questions in the chat comment. Maybe when I get to a point, we'll respond to those questions before we proceed. Now, pollution charges. Pollution charges. These charges, under pollution charges, industries are charged per unit of pollutant discharge. So in so doing, it forced most of these industries to reduce their pollution level in order to minimize how much is going out of their pocket to pay for waste generated by their industry. And then the next is subsidy reform. Subsidy reform is another way of reducing the impact of industries on the environment. A good example is what happened in Nigeria. The moment Tinubu came on board, he removed subsidy completely on fuel, right? Fuel is one of the fossil component of fossil fuel. That is PMS and other products. The moment that increased, if you observe that most people were forced to park their cars. Some resort to trekking, some resort to maybe distances that they could cover by leg, but before subsidy were using their cars, now became shorter distance for them, and they were utilizing it to maybe some would say I'm exercising and etc. Now, what I want you to understand there is that reduce PMS consumption and other aspects of fossil fuel in individuals packed up their generators and emissions were cut down. Companies reduced consumption of this PMS and other diesel, gas, and etc. in order to save costs and etc. And in so doing, there was that reduced level of industrial and even household emissions into the environment. And that will help in minimizing the impact of emissions into the environment, and etc. Now, the hello, here government reduces cost barriers to green investment. And we have two types. We'll talk about tax credits for renewable energy and then green public procurement. Other tax credit for renewable energy is a physical incentive that government or regulatory organizations put in place to encourage people to transit from the use of fossil fuel to clean energy, such as solar energy, wind, biomass systems, and etc. There are some kind of incentives. If you install solar, you get something for it. They give you some incentives to encourage you to encourage others to transit from the use of either generators to the use of other things that will increase emissions into the atmosphere. The next is green public procurement. Green public procurement is actually a fiscal incentive move under the procurement guidelines, whereby government insists that all government purchase must be with industries or suppliers that are mindful of the environment, such that if you produce using low carbon, if you produce using cleaner energy, government will patronize you. But if you produce using fossil fuel, government is not going to patronize you. And as such, most public contracts are within the green supply chain system, such that if you don't produce using the prescribed guideline, government will not do any business with you. And you see a lot of companies, in order to have public procurement, public purchase, and etc., will be forced to transit from the use of fossil fuel to the use of clean energy and as such. And in fact, most times they will insist that you label your products that are eco-labeled and then green supply chain compliant. The final one is innovation and structural transition policies. The first one is research and development grants. Here, funds are made available for technological innovation that will encourage environmental sustainability. If you are interested in carrying out research that will bring new ideas on how to manage waste, on how to transit waste into wealth, on how to recycle, reuse, and then reduce waste generation, then funds will be made available for you to carry out that research. And such research will support either industries or other production outfit to minimize waste generation impact on the environment. Then there is another one, which is industrial symbiosis program. Here is an instrument whereby a program that is put in place to promote waste to resource exchange between firms. For instance, if an industry is maybe waste from an industry is raw material for another, such industries will be encouraged to collaborate, either situate even in one place, so that as they are generating that waste, it becomes raw material for the next industry. And then this one industry purchase such raw materials while the other industry generates funds, thereby having a symbiotic relationship, sort of. Then finally, extended producer responsibility is another important measure that is put in place, whereby producers are required to buy back, like buyback policy, or retrieve back the end life of a particular product. When a product life cycle is is finished, then producers are required by law or by some policies or guidelines to purchase back such products for recycling or for managing the waste. For instance, electronics, gadgets, and etc. Such companies will be required to get them back and then manage such waste in a proper manner. In China, computers and etc., producers of such are expected to get them back when those computers are no longer in use in order to reduce e-waste. In some situations, companies are expected to purchase back the waste generated from their products. For instance, plastic waste. If you buy bottled water, and by the time you finish taking your bottled water, you are not expected to just throw it into the environment. Your producer is expected to purchase that container back, a buy-in. Maybe if you have like 10 bottled water, you bring it back to the factory. Maybe they pay you for it, or you get maybe one bottle water and etc. The same thing with canned products. In some regions, they have even automated machines whereby you go back with your empty canned products, you load it to those machines, and you're able to assess fresh products based on the value of your canned products you release, you introduce into that environment. Even in Benue State, there was a time Otom's, the former governor's company, was buying back empty sachets of pure water. You know, this sachet water, the polythene. If you gather them back to the company, you are given certain amount. But I discovered that the amount that was being paid for the empty sachets was not encouraging enough. So most people were no longer interested in going around to collect this. But if it's effective and efficient, you will notice that it becomes a livelihood strategy for others. And as such, by extension, protecting the environment from the impact of littering these plastic containers, empty cans, and etc. within our environment. I think I will stop here. We'll take questions before we proceed. Hello, class rep.
Yes, Prof.
Yes. Are there questions we need to?
No particular question, sir.
So let's interact. I think somebody talked about. I saw a question in the chat box. If you have a question, raise up your hand. Then will maybe your contribution before we proceed to the next one. I think I saw. Okay, I saw. How can you and us tackle the issue of non-compliance on environmental laws in Nigeria? Let's take that before we continue with other. You know, we have very good policies. We have very good laws in this country. In fact, we have been rated as one of the countries with beautiful policies, beautiful laws, beautiful guidelines. Our problem is implementation. Our problem is monitoring. Our problem is proper implementation of these guidelines, these principles, these laws, and etc. You know, the political will is not there. For instance, some of the people in power are the ones in the production sector. And for you to integrate some of these environmental friendly measures in our industries, it requires extra funds. Now, if the policymaker is also the producer and is not willing to comply and is not willing to maybe part ways with extra funds in order to establish an environmentally friendly industrial setting, then who is going to ask him to do that? So it's a problem. Is the kind of value systems we have. Elsewhere, it's not about individuals, it's about the entire nation. But here, it's about people who are in power. It's what they want, they implement. If they don't want, even though the policies are in place, they just ignore them completely. You understand? Dugeri, your hand is up. Can you unmute your mic so that we have one or two? We hear your contribution or your question. Dugeri. Class rep, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, sir, I can hear you, sir.
Their hands are up and it seems they don't want to say something.
Okay, let me unmute
Okay,
them.
Adoga.
Dugeri, I'll mute Dugeri first. Then
Okay,
Adoga.
Good morning, Prof.
Morning, how are you?
Good morning. I'm fine, sir. Good morning, class.
Yes.
My
We cannot hear you, please.
issue is concerning the explained environmental sustainability, which is on the extent producer responsibility. Am I heard now? Hello?
Yeah,
Yes,
we can hear you now.
Hello,
Maybe
Prof. All right, sir. Yeah, good morning,
start all
sir.
over again.
Yeah, I'll do that, sir. Good morning, sir. Good morning, class.
Morning. Okay, we can hear you, yeah.
All right, sir. I say my issue is on the extending the last governance regime, Governor Otomi Benue State. He initiated a program.
Yes.
That the waste from the
Maybe you drop a question in the chat box. We can't hear
the
you.
sachet waters when you buy and
Dugeri, please just drop your question in the chat box. We can come back to it later. Then Adoga, over to you.
Right.
Unmute
Adoga
so that he can say something.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, class. I've already been unmuted. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, my question is regarding the policies for sustainability. You know, in Nigeria, our country, most of the companies, the enterprise in Nigeria, there is no accountability metrics at the end of every year for them. Are they showing any report card, environmental report card of how their companies have been performing? I don't think that has not been in place, even though the regulatory standards are there, the lead agencies are there in form of NESDRIA. I think it's high time we begin to mount pressure on those people to ensure that companies begin to show their report cards so that the global community will begin to take us serious. And that leads us to ESG, environment, social, and governance reporting. So when it comes to standard of doing business, I don't think we're anywhere close because our policies are not biting, just like you said. So from we, the principal owner of the country, because the people, we own the country, not them. It's high time we begin to compel those agencies to make our policies and laws to begin to bite so that the systems will work. By the time it begins to work, the capacity you are giving us, we will now have where to apply them. Because, for example, if I want to float my own consulting company as an environmental professional, since the enforcement is not working and the companies are allowed to just do whatever they are doing, how would they now engage me? But in the scenario where by the end of every company is forced to show their report cards, to give account of how they have been performing, I think there will be much more work for consulting firms, which you are preparing us for. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for that very important contribution. You see, the agencies are there. the policies are there. Now, implementation, enforcement is a major challenge, because some of these agencies are not doing what they are supposed to do. Or even when they want to do the right thing, corruption, which has eaten deep into our system, take precedence. And as such, Naira speaks better than the scorecards you talked about. Because some officers, that is, those enforcement officers, might prefer, in fact, when they come to your company, they are not interested in looking at what you do, your records. Or they're interested in what they will take home from that exercise. And as such, companies just prepare a package for them and don't even bother taking down important indices, important indicators required by those agencies. I talked about this ethanol plant along Makudigboko Road. If you have been to that road, you know the plant I'm talking about. That is a plant that was established before an EIA report was presented and approved by NESRA under Ministry of Environment. Now, the same company operated as if it was a secret court. Up till now, you cannot just go there for research purpose or maybe visiting or observation within that company. You will not be allowed in. And apart from that, behind the company, there are guards protecting even outside the company so that you will not be able to get close. Now, if not for the efforts of these hikers, would have been receiving waste from that factory down to River Benue. And the most painful issue there is that this factory is upstream, right? Whatever is released into the river, we're going to consume down in Makurdi. Maybe after 2 or 3, 4, 5 years, would have experienced a serious maybe disease outbreak or issues, because our water plant is down, our Greater Water Works is downstream, the settlement is downstream, and most of the people within the settlement rely on River Benue in one way or the other. So the issue is not that the laws are not there. Our problem is corruption. Corruption has eaten into virtually everything, to a point that people don't do the right thing, because even if you do the right thing, you'll be targeted. If you go to such companies and insist that the right thing must be done, if you are not careful, you will not leave that environment, or they will frame something against you. So most of these inspectors, as they go there, they are there to play the game. Give me what is mine and then do whatever you want to do. And the environment is always at the receiving end. Thank you very much. Tachia Tefa. Can we hear from Tachia?
Tachia, you can unmute yourself, sir. Good morning, Prof. Hello.
Good morning. How are you?
Prof, I am fine, sir. Good morning, class. I would like to contribute a little bit, talk about the policies that encourage environmental sustainability, like you rightly said, Prof. You know, we have regulatory... Hello?
We can hear you. Go on.
Okay, we have regulatory policies in our country. We also have regulatory agencies that often fail to implement or enforce these policies. So I would like to, on my own, think that maybe government should focus more on fiscal incentives, like as one of the policies that encourage environmental sustainability. And by encouraging or focusing more on fiscal incentives, I mean, even in areas of creating more market for industries to thrive. I would like to give a little example. Where it is often said that most of the small machines that are used in our country, Nigeria, are produced basically by elementary school children in China. So I think that is a form of creating a market by way of incentives for such an industry to thrive. So I want to dwell just a little bit that the government maybe should look more into encouraging fiscal incentives, particularly in ways of creating market. I think it will help in the fight against environmental sustainability. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for that contribution. If you reflect back to those instruments we discussed, that incentives was one of them, and they are in several ways. Sometimes maybe government might decide not to only purchase with people that are complying with the environmental guidelines and etc. Or you might not even be granted a license to operate if you don't integrate such measures. And again, we Africans don't work more on reward system. Our reward system is very bad. We punish more than rewarding. And sometimes when you reward people, encourage them more than when they see you punish another person. So bringing up incentives that maybe if you are doing the right thing, government might even support you, government might grant you tax holiday, government might even pay you for preserving the environment and etc. And in so doing, other industries or other factories will now decide to follow suit, follow the same pattern, follow the same, so that they can also benefit from such incentives. So it's a good contribution, and then we just look at how you are professionals. Maybe some of you are in practice, some of you will find yourself in such environment, and when you are there, do the right thing. Make sure we implement our policies strictly, and then monitor producers such that they don't go against the guidelines prescribed by our policies or our laws. Thank you very much. Who is Galazi A05?
Galazi will not be allowed to speak. Oh. We have given clear instructions that everybody should rename their device.
Okay, Julius Musa. Julius Musa, unmute your mic. We're not going to allow Galazi to talk because no identity. If we download this attendance now, how do we reconcile Galazi and your name?
All right. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for the wonderful lectures, and then good morning, dear colleagues. My question, Prof, is on how will I put it now? It is a kind of dichotomy where one school of thought, you understand, are in the notion that this environmental problem happening around, especially in our environment, Nigeria, that it is like people are always pointing at the government, government, this, then that we, the people as themselves, the problem, as more to the problem than the government. Why other school of thought will say, no, the government have to do more, you understand? Because just like you made an example, you said at times you stay, maybe as a civilian or maybe as an agent, you want to say this, but then before you know, they will side corner you, or maybe they will not find you again. You understand? That's to say they're exercising their power, you understand, as to when you are saying the truth or what. So I want to know, Prof, really, who should really sit up with regard to this environmental degradation more, right? That is, who is the slap really on? Is it really the people or the government? Is it really the people that are to sit up, you understand, and say, because we know that EIA is supposed to capture where people are to say their mind, you understand, that's EIS, capture to say their mind before a project is being done, but still yet you see most projects are done and people self are not even in support of it, but still yet it will still happen. So who are those that are going to stay firmly, you understand, holding, you understand, their ground as to the environmental problem? Is it really the government or the people themselves? Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you very much. Have you heard of this PPPR stuff? Is a problem that is affecting everybody, right? Both government and the individuals within the region. Now, we are not going to say government for everything, because there are some things that government might not be able to do because of maybe they are closer to the people, or the idea of starting from the people before getting to planners and etc. That is bottom-up approach to tackling problems. Now, for me, when both public and private, when there is both public and private partnership in terms of addressing environmental problem, we're going to get better results. But if we leave everything into the hands of government, then we might end up not tackling this problem, and we are the people living with this problem. So for me, there's need for every stakeholder to be involved, both the private individuals at different levels, both public individuals, both public, that is government at different levels, local, sub-regional, and the national, should also be committed to solving this problem. So it's not a one organ thing, but everybody should do what they are supposed to do. If you're supposed to provide policy direction, provide policy direction. If you're supposed to provide at the level of implementation, do what you're supposed to do. Because if there's failure at any chain or any level of the policy implementation down to execution, monitoring, and etc., there will be problem. At any point you have issues or no commitment or no willingness to do what you're supposed to do, will end up remaining with this. So for me, the government should partner with public and private individuals in order to tackle the problem of tackle environmental problem. Let me give you an example. Take, for instance, in some countries, you are not allowed to use polythene, this leather, what we call leather, to package for people, right? You are expected to use paper bags. That is the policy. Now, it is expected that individuals, when you go to purchase and maybe a producer decides to package something for you in polythene, you are expected to say no. I don't know whether you understand what I'm trying to say. The consumer also has a part to play. The producer has a part to play. Government has a part to play. If government does his own part and producers fail to do their own part and consumers fail to do their own part, we will not be able to enforce some of these policies that have been designed by us and then for use within the country. So that is the problem. And I think I've answered your question. If you are not okay, then maybe you say one more thing. Dugari, I've seen your question. You talked about why the payment was not encouraging and then the initiative failed. You know, for some countries, such buyback are not left in the hands of producers alone. Some countries, what they do is that they give incentives to producers and then encouraging them to buy back at a reasonable amount, such that will encourage consumers to return those leftovers or those waste back to the company. But in Otom's case, maybe he was governor, he felt he would have the funds to be able to do the buyback. But the moment he implemented it, it was not encouraging enough to make consumers return these paper bags, return these pure water bags back to the factory. In fact, at some point, it was little children that they will pack a heap like this, and then to get to factory, you can't even get up to 100 naira. And at the end, it was not viable enough economically for them to keep going around to pick these paper bags. If you look at the issue of iron condemn, it is a viable business because the amount scavengers get from it is enough to sustain them in that. And as such, it's difficult for you to just see a metal, a waste metal on the by the roadside or even on waste bin. The people that purchase this have amount that is reasonable enough to encourage people to continue doing the business. In fact, for some, that is their livelihood strategy. That is where they make their money to take care of their families and what have you. So it's about the capacity to implement that policy. And if you don't have a capacity, in some regions, government have agencies that support producers in managing waste in the area of buyback. You buy back the waste so that it can be either recycled, reused, or transformed into transformed into raw materials. Thank you. I think there's a question, a contribution by Owolabi Olawale. He talked about Lagos state government is trying in respect to sustaining our environment. There are so many people that has been convicted with within last year to this year in defiling and polluting the environment. My question is, how can we, the professional environmentalists, make the world know about the deficiency of our country in sustaining our environment? Yeah, in fact, not just Lagos State, there are so many state governments at sub-regional level that are doing their best to work on pollution. If you go to Kano, there are measures in place to take care of environmental waste. If you see what they are doing concerning fecal sludge, fecal as in what they have is even a private encouraged setting that they go around to collect fecal sludge from soccerways and etc., transport it, treat it, process it, and then the farmers are there to use it for fertilizer, as organic fertilizer. So, but as environmentalists, all you need to do is provide your guidance. If you have the opportunity, in policy making, bring it to bear. If you have opportunity in implementation, bring it to bear. If you have opportunity in monitoring, ensure the right thing is done. And then sometimes we don't even need to tell international organizations. They know where we are in terms of environmental sustainability. We don't need to tell them because some of them have been with us. Some of them have seen how we're able to handle our business in very poor manner and etc. All we need to do is to ensure that we change that narrative by encouraging our people to do the right thing and make sure we implement sustainable measures in our industrial sector to move away from that bad name or bad picture to something better. Thank you very much. Okay. Vandichia, you can unmute your mic. And ask your question.
Good morning. Why is more is contribution, sir?
Okay, go ahead
Hello?
and do your contribution. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So my contribution is the erection of communication masts around town is so worrisome that you see somebody staying occupying the small portion of land, probably 100 by 50, and the 100 by 50, you still divide it into half, where this communication mast is being erected. The occupant are still staying on the same piece of land. I think I was interacting with somebody and the person was like, him is happy because he enjoyed 24 hours light from the telecommunication man. I was now telling him, okay, you think about the cumulative danger of you staying where these masks are. The radiation from this mask, they will affect you in a long time. You won't know. So we are talking more of environmental sustainability, and I think what is more channel of waste disposal into the environment, more of those disposing. I think they should pay attention. I don't know if NESRA, how they regulate all this. I don't know, but I think it's.
Thank you very much. I didn't get most part of the question, but I think I have the idea, except maybe if I don't get it very well, then somebody can maybe who heard him better than me and myself then will come up to say, well, but I think you're talking about the dangers of locating within a closer range to these marks, these telecommunication marks. You know, I think there is a protocol, there is a guideline for installing that. There is the minimum distance of, as in the minimum distance you can reside to that max is there in the guidelines for installing that. But our problem is our people don't care. When they see money, they don't think of the health implications, because with time, from the constant radiations from these coming up from these marks, it can result to cancer and other impact on our health. You know, so what I'm trying to say is that it's not that the guideline is not there. The people installing ignore because we don't have proper monitoring, proper implementation. And then the people making their land available don't even understand what the minimum distance they can stay to that max. And it's a problem. So we need some kind of awareness to our people, and we need to maybe regulatory agencies ensure that any telecom company should not endanger the life of the people because they want to establish their marks. Wherever you establish your marks, you should follow the established protocol so that it will not affect people residing around that place. So it's a problem. We know some within the same 100 by 100 yard, you see a huge marks within that yard, and the people staying in the same area. I know of a family that the band, what looks like is it a broadband? I don't know. I'm not a technical person in that area. Fell off from that place and almost landed on the house of the host to that max. It was maybe the grace of God that saved them from disaster. Apart from emission, that max can collapse. And what happens to the people that stay around such environment? So it's a good contribution. We need to, as professionals, we need to talk to our people, and we need to also, if you are part of the process of establishing such, you ensure that they lay down procedure, lay down guidelines for installing communication marks within our environment. I think, do we have any other? Let me check if there's any other question, then so that we can proceed. I think the minimum distance, somebody saying the minimum distance is 10 meters. 10 meters is small, but maybe that is the safe zone. Hello?
Thank you, Prof.
Somebody said 10 meters. Can anybody confirm that information?
No. Okay, sir. We will ask questions and revert. Maybe
because
by afternoon.
I know that there is the required distance, but I don't know the number. Yes, either is 1 kilometer or is 100 meters or 10 meters. I don't know. That I don't know. So I won't talk much about that. Then somebody say, at our own level, what are we doing to better our environment? That is in our homes, place of work, etc. Yeah, the whole thing is not, that is why I talk about, it's not a government thing. within your home, what are you doing? What are the sustainable measures you're adapting to have a good living within where you are staying? Are you running on generator that create noise pollution, emission of gases into the atmosphere? Some of us will talk about environmental sustainability, we preach it, but the moment you get home, you are feeling hot, then you say, on gen for me. And you forget that that generator you are running is also contributing to environmental degradation in one way or the other. So we need to, on our own, at individual levels, begin to look at cleaner cooking energy, where you don't forget about the use of charcoal, use of firewood, and etc., and begin to look at cleaner energies like maybe gas, biogas, and etc., in order to improve the quality of the environment. And then take up measures that if you construct your house, you want to roof, use iron beams and not wood, so that you minimize the impact on our forests and etc. So we have a role to play as individuals, to not just professionals. Everybody must contribute in improving the environment. Maybe the last question then somebody is saying 72-meter radius. 72-meter radius is wide, but it's an assignment. Go cross-check and get the correct prescribed meter radius for establishing a max. Samuel, you can unmute your max. We'll take the last question, then we continue. I think we'll have 30 minutes. We can use 30 minutes to do one or two things before we proceed. Samuel, can you hear me?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Sir, I just want to quickly ask, there are some debates when it comes to these policies. There are some debate that some of these policies are unfair to Africa as a whole. Looking at it, that we contribute less of these emissions, and we are also to be under the same standard with some of the Western world that are contributing a majority of this. That debate is still there and is still ongoing. I want to ask that it's not right that we should develop our own policies that are peculiar to our challenges. Like you mentioned, an example of maybe not granting license to some factories if they don't meet up with some of these demands. And also we have the challenge of unemployment that is there. Government would want the teeming unemployed youth to be employed. When you look at it from such situation, the government might be in a dilemma most of the time. So don't you think it's time I'm just thinking, don't you think it's time we look at our own, develop our own policies that are peculiar to our situation, and we should also understand because I come to terms with us. Just thinking widely. Then another thing that I think we can do as a government is maybe give tax waivers to industries to meet up with some of these standards. Because if you want to insist that they should meet up with it, it might also lead to so many of them shutting down or not even coming up at all, and unemployment case is still there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for that concern and the question you asked. I agree with you. The debate is on, but you know, the issue there is that even though we contribute less, the impact is not limited to where it is most of these emissions are coming from. The impact is globally. In fact, some of the pollution we experience in our own region could be from a region far away from us. And apart from that, the dimension it has on climate change and etc. I agree with you completely on the fact that we need to, in establishing our policies, we need to factor in the context specific dimension of copy and paste is affecting virtually every sphere of life in this country. Sometimes our people travel out, they see what is happening abroad, they don't even look at the peculiarities of such areas and just copy it to our own region without looking at our own peculiar concern concerning that issue. Although there is a recent move in policy formulation dimension whereby they insist on context-specific approach to our policies. And I think there's serious improvement in the kind of policies we make, because even though we are taking after maybe advanced countries, our situation is not completely like theirs. So we must, first of all, look at how we incorporate our peculiarities in addressing our issues, rather than going to just take what is happening either in UK, in US, in Canada, in Australia, Japan, China, and etc., and then dump in our own region. So that aspect of context-specific approach to our policy formulation is very important, and I think is a good contribution and etc. I can't remember the second question again, but if I've answered or addressed the issue raised by you, then. Samuel, can you hear me? Okay, there's a hand again. Jennifer, maybe let's take this one, then we'll proceed.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Good
Jennifer,
morning, class. I'm fine, sir. I just want to contribute to what somebody said, that what are individuals doing concerning the waste management. I remember there was a time I spoke in class that I go to the market with a basket. I tell my customers, please don't give me leather, because I already have a basket. Outside my house, I kept a dustbin bag where I in fact, it's labeled, don't throw your sachet water here, like the sachet leather. They throw their packs inside the dustbin. So there's a company that always comes into my estate to pick dirty. I don't know where they pour the leather bag, but individually, what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying at my own end to stop the littering of sachet water and collecting leather bags. I tell my customers, even I tell my neighbors when they sell to me, I say, no, just give me. I don't collect leather bags from people. Polythene bags, I don't collect it from people. I hardly, maybe out of 10 items that are supposed to be put into those containers, I might just have just one or two, because of the dangers of polythene bags in the environment. Thank you, sir.
That is a very good practical illustration of how we individuals can contribute to improving, maybe supporting environmental sustainability. We will have a role to play. Every one of us will have a role to play. For instance, you buy 10 things and you collect all polythene bags. When you get home, you don't know how to even handle them, or most people they just litter them within the environment. And these are non-degradable materials. It will take a long period of time for them to finally decompose within the environment. So we need to, if your country is not saying use paper bags, degradable material, what you need to do is on your own. Maybe you get 3 bags, you buy, except things that you cannot just dump them within your bag. So minimize the level of polythene bag collection from your customers. And if they know that you don't collect polythene bag, the moment you come, they won't bother giving you, because they know that you are not. But so as professionals and practitioners, we need to show the way. We need to be in the forefront in terms of encouraging environmental sustainability, and especially in the area of waste management and that is the waste generation, transportation, and disposal. Thank you very much. I think we still have 20 minutes. Let's see if we can do one or two so that in the next 1 hour we just come 10 or 20 minutes, then the remaining time we interact together and round up the class. Thank you for that wonderful contributions, wonderful questions. And if you still have a question, you can drop it in the comment section. Okay, you talked about suggesting tax waivers. Yeah, most countries encourage people that are put in place sustainable measures in their industrial sector. What they do, sometimes they even give you money. What I talked about carbon credit, where you are paid for preserving the environment. So if you adapt sustainable industrial practices, regional government might decide to say, okay, since you are doing this, you'll be given certain amount, maybe monthly or annually or periodically, to encourage you to sustain those practices and at the end protect the environment. Thank you very much. I think somebody said I have stopped collecting too. I go shopping with a shopping bag. Okay, with my shopping bags too, and in the house. I have been encouraging waste separation for people. The waste separation is another important thing, because if you jumble everything together, it becomes difficult to sort. But if you have different bags for different waste, maybe food waste, plastic waste, and etc. So people that are collecting it, it becomes easier for them. They don't have the problem of sorting. If you go to hospitals, they don't just jumble waste into one place. If you have, you observe that there is a container for particular and well labeled, so that workers know that if I have this kind of waste, this is where I'm supposed to drop it, and it makes management of such waste easier. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Class rep, is the class rep with us at all? Are you with me? Hello?
Yes, I'm still in power, sir.
Okay, and the network is okay, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, let me talk about the problems, contemporary industrial problems.
Sir,
I'll just mention,
with you, sir.
Okay, I'll just mention them. I might not say much about them because I think these are things you have idea of. But if you
I'm
have
with you,
issues,
sir. Yes, sir. I'm here, sir.
All right. So we talk about contemporary industrial issues, the kind of issues that industries face generally. We are not tying it to either sustainability or whatever, but they also have influence on sustainability generally. Class rep, what is wrong with your network? Okay, let's talk about contemporary industrial problems, energy crisis. We know energy supply is a major challenge to industrial production, and the most reason why some industries are not willing to transit into the new state-of-the-art kind of energy supply. Most of them relying on fossil fuel. That also has issues on our environment, poor management and corruption. Corruption has eaten deep into our system such that it affects everything. It affects down to even our homes and etc. I don't want to talk more about. We have technological backwardness, especially in third world countries or African continent. Most of the technology we use are currently obsolete technology that have been abandoned by advanced countries. So using such technology to produce, you are already disadvantaged because what you produce will be lower quality compared to what those nations using current state-of-the-art technology are producing. And all of us are going to the same market. If we had a separate market, it would have been a different thing. But if you take inferior commodity and a high quality commodity into the same market, you will not be able to sell. And most of our commodities end up being in the category of dumping and etc. So political instability is another problem. Political instability, conflicts, and etc. Transiting some, in fact, most Africans countries are returning back to military rule. They are abandoning democracy because democracy has not been able to provide all the gains it promised. So most of the people, Burkina Faso, Mali, in fact, the Sahel regions have all returned back to military rule, and such affects industrial activities. Inconsistent policies. Our policies, you see, today, a government will bring up policy, and then another government, instead of coming to build on existing policy, they throw them out and introduce new policy, and it makes people in the industrial sector confused, because today you are, investing to adapt such technology, and then the next thing they tell you, no, move to so with the new policy, this is what we want, and then you abandon that, begin to invest. So it's a serious problem to our industrial sector and the environment. Issues of labor supply in terms of the quality. Most of the labor available within our own part of the world are either unskilled or semi-skilled labor. Highly skilled labor are not really available because sometimes our training setting is such that it will give you knowledge, but will have little skills and etc. And as such, even when we are going into construction and etc. or industrial activities, we need to bring in foreigners to come and support us. Let me share this with you. During Obasanjo's time, when he was trying to revamp the rail sector, you observe that most of the people working in that rail construction were Chinese, and most of them were technicians. They were not even graduates. But our engineers were answering yes, sir, to these roadside technicians that had the skill of railway construction. So it's a challenge, because if you don't have the labor, importing labor is very expensive. Shortage of capital is another thing. Industrial investment, industrial activities require, or industrial activities are capital intensive. So if the capital is not there, is a problem. Poor infrastructure, poor roads, poor market, poor energy sources, poor most of these infrastructure are inadequate, and as such, they are the utilities that support industrial activities. If they are not there, it becomes difficult. Then environmental regulations and climate change. This is where it concerns us more, because our environmental regulation, we have the policies, they are there, but we are not implementing them. We talked about that in our last interactive class, so I won't say. Then market competition and globalization. I talked about market competition because what we are producing must go to the global market. We are living within a global village under the theory of globalization. Whatever you are doing is no longer a localized thing. It's something that must appear at the international stage. And if you are not using, if you are not producing quality materials, you have problem. Class rep. We have 12 more minutes. Can we maybe more contributions, more interactions before we end these morning sessions and then morning session and come back for our afternoon section and round up. Are you with me? What is happening? Okay, if class rep is not here, there is no problem. If you have any concern or anything you want to contribute, then we'll use these 12 minutes to interact before we round up. You can drop your questions. You can raise up your hand. If you have any contribution, okay. Dugeri, you can unmute your mic and then let's start with your question. Dugeri, unmute your mic, okay.
All right, Prof.
Sorry, unmute, okay.
I've done that, Prof. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for the lecture, a wonderful lecture so far, sir. I want to contribute to the issue of inconsistent policies.
Yeah.
You know, actually is affecting industries. You know, when a government is on board, like the president of any country now, and he formulates his policies. In fact, some of the policies are environmentally sustainable. But when the subsequent government comes in, it doesn't matter whether the policy is maintaining our environment. The person on the seat now decide to align the policy and bring another ones, not minding whether the one he's formulating now will affect the environment negatively. So my contribution is that I think the persons concerned, the government should look into that issue. Once a policy is introduced and it's affecting the environment positively, and it's impacting the environment positively, it should be maintained even for decades, so that our greener pasture will be maintained for our future generations. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for that contribution and submission. I agree with you. In fact, I will use, I don't know why I use crossover oftentimes, because it comes to mind when it comes to the issue of environmental sustainability. They have been in the forefront of championing approaches that can sustain the environment. During I think Donald Duke's time, there were strict environmental policies in terms of harvesting forest products. And during his time, in fact, he was the one that revived the Obudukatu Ranch and other parks by employing more rangers and then forest guards and etc. to protect the known forests, the Akampa forest and etc. within the area. Now, one of the policy there in protecting the forest was that if you want to cut down one tree, you are expected to plant 2 or 3, nurture them to a level, then go to the forest department in your local government, bring inspectors to come and see what you have done, and then they will give you the permit to cut down the tree. During that time, it was an offense for you to transport forest products from one region to another in Cross River. It was during his time that most of the areas that were forest conserved areas became effective. Now, the moment he left, do you know that Obudu Cattle Ranch is not functioning like that again? Tourism prospects declined completely. The mountain race of Obudu that were bringing people from all over the world is no more. The moment the next person came on board, our problem is that if we continue with somebody's policy, it's as if the person will get the credit. So we want to bring our own thing so that we get credit for. And governance is continuity. It's not an individual thing. Whatever you inherit and is good, you should continue with that process and make sure you get to maybe improve on it or implement it to the timeline specified in that policy, and then set up the review process and see how they can improve on that policy. But the problem is, most times maybe the person coming to take over is from another political party, and if you continue with what you have done, then to them is a credit to that political party and not the new political party. So it's a problem. It's a political arrangement issue, and our mentality towards governance. Governance is not about individual. In fact, in advanced countries, if the way the process work like a functional organ, such that if you put even a non-entity in position, things will still be moving as if there's no problem. But here, the moment somebody comes, it becomes the landlord, it becomes the organ or everything, and he doesn't want to hear about what was in place before now. If you look at Benue State as an example, you will observe that the past government had a security outfit, a local security outfit. The moment the new government came in place, didn't even take time to assess whether that security outfit was very, very functional, or they just disbanded everybody and then establish a new security outfit. If a new governor should come in now, he will disband this current security outfit and bring something new. So if we continue in that direction, how are we going to attain the progress as a people? Because we are more concerned about political platforms, we are more concerned about individual achievements, we are more concerned, not a group achievement as a region per se. So what you are saying is correct. The inconsistency in our policies are the major problem of our people. Not that the policies are not good, because our people, I want to create my own policy. Let it be that I was the one that created that policy. Even if it failed to achieve anything, I don't mind. Even if the past policy was very good, was well implemented, it's none of my business. I want to bring my own as in your own signature to, and you can bring your signature in even implementing that policy in a better way than it was implemented in the past. Thank you very much. Okay, somebody said, yes, during Donald Duke, waste management practices, policies on illegal logging and transport in terms of heavy-duty vehicles within urban cities in the day, they move only at night. Okay, they were allowed to move only at night, and you must be checked by the relevant authorities before you are allowed to proceed. So let's take the next question by Angom Ruben. You can unmute your mic now.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful lecture that is ongoing. Sorry, the network has been throwing me out, and I want to respond on where one of our colleagues was asking a question about a reasonable distance of of network mass of the towers. Okay. Now, there are some of those distance which people are supposed to know according to the NCC in erecting some of those sites. Now, for a mast that is less than 25 meters, the setback distance to a residential building should be 5 to 10 meters. Then for 25 to 40 meters, it should be 10 to 50 meters setback. Then for 40 to 60 meters in height of a mast, the distance between it and a residential building should be 15 to 20 meters. Then any mast that is above 60 meters, ranging to 100, is equivalent of that height to the residential building. In essence, and more, in essence, Now, if there are challenges such as violent wind, and let's say one of those features, one of those equipment that have been mounted on those masts, if any of them should fall off from it, the impact on it that will cause on some of those residential buildings will not be there. But whereas the residential buildings are very close to those masts, the impact on them will be very more. Thank you very much, sir, for this.
Thank you very much for that detailed analysis of setback for installing masts. And it's clear that it's not just a one cap fit all situation. Is a function of the height of the max. The height of the max determines the setback. If it's higher, the setback will also be higher. If it's a short max, then the setback will also be less than the other setting. Thank you very much for that clarification. Oluwakemi, you have the floor. I think we'll have 1 minute. Maybe I will take this and then proceed on break and come back for the afternoon session. Oluwakemi. You have the floor. We have just 1 minute, please. Okay, thank you very much. Since if you have any question, you can maybe drop it on, or when we come back, we'll attend to those questions because we are left with just maybe 20 minutes lectures, then we'll round up. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your commitment so far and participation in terms of class interaction. So we'll be proceeding on our break. We'll come back by 1. Please, let's come back on time so that we'll be able to finish. This is Friday, so that you can have time to attend to other things. I know it is an intensive lecture period for you, a whole week dedicated to classwork. Let's come back on time so that we can finish before that 2 p.m. and proceed and prepare for next week if there's a next class. I think there's a next course coming up in next week. Thank you very much.